In this week's edition of Project 2J, we're putting these into these. Stay tuned. Hey guys, I'm Daryl and welcome to this edition of Project 2J. That's right, this week we're throwing a set of airbags in the back of this thing. I'm running an OME heavy duty spring kit in the back and I'm running a small spacer on top of that. So I've probably got 2.5 inches, a little bit more than that of lift. As such, the off-the-shelf airbag kits don't work. Luckily, Airbag Man in Australia and Queensland will modify their kits to suit. At ride height, I had to send them length of spring, inside diameter and wire diameter, so they could work out what bag they could put inside. As a result, I think I've gone to the next bag up and there's another spacer to put at the bottom of these things. It's a fairly easy install, however on the 2J you do have to drill a hole in the bottom perch to put the air cable through, but apart from that it's fairly easy. Unfortunately on the 2J, because of that, you've got to take the spring out, whereas a lot of the coil sprung vehicles you can actually just wedge the bag into the springs. Now in the kit that Airbag Man sends you, you get 2 Firestone airbags to suit. Over the top of these airbags stretches this protective sleeve, and that ends up as such. On one end there's the valve to pump this up with. Now on the 2J you actually take out the bump stop on the rear suspension when you install these things and you don't reinstall it. I know, I questioned it too. So I've gone and had a look at all the different kits available for the back of the 2J worldwide and they all remove it. And they remove it because you don't need it anymore basically, which is good because mine are absolutely had it in its place. This goes over the fitting that the bump stop goes in, and the bag just presses up against this. So when you put the bag in, this sits on top. Now underneath this we've got our air line that comes out, and on my kit I've got 2 spacers that go on the bottom of the airbag as such, and that's basically how it sits inside the spring. And then you've got to drill a hole in the bottom spring mount so your airline can go out and snake its way along the diff and then go back up to a fitting. Now they've supplied airline that's in a protective cover. They've also supplied all the fittings, some cable ties, and they've also supplied a bracket where the air valves go that you can pump them up with. With this kit you pump up each airbag independently of the other one. I know on some kits they've got a 2-piece in and I don't know why they do this. I presume because I have run air shocks on a Suzuki years ago and we sort of worked on the premise that if we put a 2-piece in it, as one shock came up it'd push down on the other shock, but anyway that was a different time and place. But with these, each bag's pumped up separately, so it's a fairly simple job really. The main things we have to do is get these springs out and drill a hole, which is 13mm in the spring perch. I think they suggest we drill a small pilot hole like I'd normally do anyway, and then drill the 13mm once you've done that. So let's have a look at how we're going to get these springs out. Now in the home garage, if you don't have a lift, I find it best to work on one side at a time. Jack up the body and flex out the rear end. Before you do that, undo the bottom mount on your shock and undo the mount on your sway bar, and that will allow it to drop down enough that your spring unseats itself, and you should just be able to pull that out as such. Once we've done that, we've got to undo this bump stop and they just pull out. As you can see, they're absolutely cactus, so they'll be a good thing gone. Now before I do anything, just be careful when you're doing this stuff guys with safety, and you've got the vehicle on a jack. I've got a chassis stand under the axle and I've got the chassis supported too, so it's not going to fall on me. This is the bottom mount and it sits like that. I'll just mark a hole where we need to drill as such, and we'll drill that out with a 4mm hole and then we'll go to a 13. I'll just spray some cutting spray on this too, make it easier on myself. I'll also just deburr that with a step bit. Now I'll just cut the supplied pipe in half with a sharp knife. They do suggest not to use side cutters on these things because it flattens the pipe out inside. So they can provide a cutter or a Stanley knife. Now these covers are part of their high pressure kit. I'm presuming they keep the bag actually constrained within the cover so they don't stretch much outwardly. So we need to press all of the air out of the bag and shove it inside the spring. Now into the airbag, that's just a press fit. And that won't come out. Now onto the base of this, we put the chamfered end to the airbag, and then the bottom one sits underneath that one like that. And you can see how that sits against the airbag flush. This one sits to the top of the airbag, and they suggest that when you install it to put the airbag about halfway through the spring length. Now at this point we feed the air line through the hole that we drilled and out. So with all that back in place, we should be able to do up the sway bar, put the shock on, put the wheel back on and let it down and start running airlines. Now, as you saw in the video, I've mounted the valves in the bumper. They're fairly safe there and out of way. I'm just a bit concerned if I mount them underneath, I'll wipe them off when I go off-road. I haven't had to put a lot of air in it. We're probably at 6 or 7 psi. As I said, I wasn't after these airbags for more carrying capacity. You really should sort of put your heavy duty springs in and then use your airbags for tuning. I have the heavy duty springs and I'm just using the airbags for tuning. That was my initial thought, and it's actually worked out quite well. My thoughts when driving with the camper attached. The Jeep pitches because it's short wheelbase, and this controls that pitch. And as such, because it's controlling the pitch in the vehicle a little bit, it's also helping with the camper with regards to that not pitching as much. So all in all, it's just fine-tuning the experience. But I'd have to say that very worthwhile, especially for a short wheelbase vehicle that's quite soft in the rear end. And I think with all this little fine-tuning, it's turning into quite a good package to drive on the road. And with that, I think that's about it for this episode. So don't forget to like, subscribe, comment down below, tell me what you think, and we'll see you next time. Bye guys.